Well, we're starting this episode a little different because we've lost somebody very near and dear to both Ryan and I and our families and our core family. Marianne Bailey was somebody really special. I'd say of my non-family, probably the most special person to me over the years. Sorry, Ryan, love you, buddy, but Marianne she volunteered at my first campaign. She brought food and snacks and drinks. She'd even pick up my dry cleaning and do whatever she could to help. And she was my first employee at Core. For a while there's a time it was basically her, Ryan, and me at the company. And her mind never wavered, but her body let her down later on in her life. And frankly, she wasn't equipped for that, and I don't blame her. And so it caused a lot of struggles. But I think maybe that's what drove her and I closer together, because when I started in politics, I was a 21-year-old kid who nobody would take seriously. And frankly, most people in the party fought against me. And Marianne faced those same challenges. She'd been around since the Rumsfeld days, since the Phil Crane days. But as her body gave up on her, she wasn't that old, to be honest, but her body just aged, two, three times the rate it should have. The party just kind of pushed her away, which frankly I always hated and mistreated her. And so that probably drove us closer together to support each other even more. But she never wavered, never, you never had a better ally if Marianne liked you. You also never had a worse enemy if Marianne didn't like you. And there were a lot of people she didn't like. So, if you're in that category, you felt her wrath. But she was somebody just full of passion and full of life. And even towards the end, she was in the St. Joseph's Home for the Elderly. And they told me even still, she wasn't in politics anymore, but she was learning Latin and she was teaching other people and she was teaching classes there, even in the home, which doesn't surprise me whatsoever. And she was telling the nuns what to do and what not to do. And she was breaking all of the rules, which is exactly what Marianne would do. So we found out just yesterday, we're recording this on Thursday, that she had passed. Her funeral's on Monday. I'll be honest, I haven't really been able to put together all of my thoughts, but we wanted to give a tribute to her as we start this episode, and I want to have Ryan with me. Ryan, any thoughts you want to share?
I mean, I would just add that Marianne was an incredible friend. I mean, she was kind, but she could also be mean. But my favorite part of her was she was who I'd call to vent, and she listened, she understood, she cared. I mean, and on that same token, there were times when you couldn't even get a word in when it was her turn to vent. But I mean, I think ultimately the definition of Catholic guilt kind of follows her because she made things happen.
This is true. I mean, how many of our candidates would not have made donor calls if it wasn't for Marianne? Just this was our tactic. So to our former clients, now we'll let the cat out of the bag. When you weren't making your calls, when you weren't doing what you need to do, you no longer got Ryan. He was the honey. He was the carrot. You got the stick. You got Marianne, and she would get you to do it, whether through guilt, as Ryan said, or just bothering the crap out of you. She'd make you do it.
I mean, I remember one time where somebody said they were going to donate to a campaign several times, never did. So she went and sat in their office all day to go get that check. I mean, she just made things happen. I mean, at the end of the day, she cared, and I don't know how many, especially about the candidates. Like a lot of people kind of, for whatever reason, it goes over their head, but the candidate as a person, like she cared.
Yeah.
And she was there for like all the ups and downs.
Yeah, I know a lot of people miss her. I mean, she's the reason, Wiley Douglas, our good friend who was with Core for a long time, she was the reason Wiley joined our team. I know this is going to be rough for him. And, her and Abe grew close. Her and Lane did work together, and she loved you, Lane. And there's others on our team that she knew that she had a relationship with, but we all miss her. She was our field boss to start, and I'm sure based on what you just heard us say, you know why we called her the field boss. And then as she moved past being actively involved in our day-to-day operations at Core, she became the Reverend Mother, where anybody who had a rough day, Marianne's job was they'd call her. She was sort of the spiritual, I don't know, heart of this company, and there's a hole certainly with her gone. Ryan mentioned just before we started recording that it's been a pretty rough time since we found out basically 24 hours ago, and I'm real cranky, and I was just venting before we started recording. And Ryan was like, "Ironically, it's Marianne who you would call right now because you're in such a cranky mood." And I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly true." So I don't know who's going to fill that void, but leaves a hole in our hearts. We love you, Marianne, and we'll see you soon. All right, go ahead, Ryan.
She'll be missed. That's all I was going to add.
All right, with that, we will transition into our actual SFR. Thanks for being with us for this. Now we'll get into the politics. Well, now we're into politics, and we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to go straight to the introductions. We've got Keith Brin, chairman of the Lake County Republicans, and also previously served as the Lake County Circuit Court clerk. Keith's an attorney and a businessman. Keith, glad to have you back. I know you've been with us before.
Thanks for having me.
We also have, because we've been doing candidates, Republican candidates who are running in some of the top flight races throughout the state. We've got another candidate joining us this week. We've got Julie Bickelhaupt. She's running in the 17th Congressional District. She's a seventh generation family farmer, a small business owner, and the chairwoman of the Carroll County Board. Julie, we're glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
We'll get Julie's thoughts on all of our topics this week. And then, of course, like all of our guests, we'll have a topic just for her to be able to talk about her race. So look forward to that later in the episode. We've got me, we've got Michael, we've got Chris. Everybody ready to roll? You guys are good? All right, let's do it. Let's get into our first topic, which is the gubernatorial race. So, an interesting dynamic here is we talked about it last week that the front running team of Bailey and Del Mar have started to pull back from debates and are no longer attending some of the debates, which of course is angering some of the other camps. This is pretty common. You see this a lot in campaigns where a candidate doing better in the polls doesn't do as many of the debates because it's a risk, and then the candidates behind them in the polls get all angry about it. We see this every race, every cycle, all the time. Obviously, if you're a candidate, you want to hear from all the candidate campaigns if you can, if you're a voter. But we talked about it last week. This is just the standard practice. But of course, the other candidates aren't happy about it. What I find is interesting as I open up this topic to anybody else's thoughts on the gubernatorial race is in these debates, and frankly, even in their social media posts and things that they're posting and talking about before and after the debates, they're attacking each other. They're not even really attacking the front runner. So it's an interesting dynamic where you're angry at the front runner for not participating, but then you don't actually even attack the front runner. You just attack each other, which, by the way, proves that Bailey was probably right not to participate, because then it just makes you guys, the other candidates, just look weak, squabbling amongst each other and not even going after the front runner. So I don't know what the strategy is here. I don't know how any of these campaigns think they're going to catch up to Bailey if they don't actually even attack Bailey. But what do I know? I just do this for a living. Anybody else have thoughts on the gubernatorial race?
I mean, the only I've seen some, social media posts from the Dabrowski camp. Jeannie Ives has been making some posts, attacking Bailey, but I feel like the attacks have mostly been, pretty weak. And also, like, if all you're doing is posting them on Facebook, for your friends to see, they probably already agree with you. Like, it's not getting anywhere.
Well,
So,
what I don't understand is it seems like, I mean, Dabrowski's willing to attack the other candidates. He did it during the debate. Mendrick got, angry at him and tried to shut him down. And, he and Heidner went after each other pretty hard. So it's not like these campaigns aren't willing to attack. I just don't understand why they're not attacking the front runner. Listen, this is how politics works. When your favorability is high, the only way to beat that candidate is to lower their favorables and increase their unfavorables. It's just the reality. And Bailey's favorables amongst the Republican primary electorate are high. So the only way you are going to beat him is if you attack him. That's just the political reality. And I understand those who just say they don't want to attack anybody. I respect that. But again, they're attacking each other. So they're clearly willing to attack. They're just not attacking the front runner. I don't get it.
well, maybe they view it as, they're fighting over the, 60% that's out there that is not going to vote for Bailey, but that's not enough. You got to bring the other guys down.
Well, the problem is, based on the polls I've seen recently, it ain't 60% that are
Yeah,
undecided.
right.
Yeah, so I think this is a misunderstood opportunity for the rest of the campaigns, particularly Dabrowski, because we kind of consider him to be the guy behind Bailey at this point. Even if it's Heidner, it's a missed opportunity for Heidner. I do think that this, honestly, I disagree with you to some degree, Collin. I think, based on my thesis that Bailey's a lot weaker than polling indicates, just based on turnout, I think Bailey actually did make a mistake skipping these debates. I think he actually benefits by keeping himself out there and showing face to the Republican audience. And he could have, I mean, based on the way that his other campaigns are going, I think he could have performed well in the debate, and I think he would have benefited from it. It's just unfortunate that the other campaigns didn't take advantage of Bailey not being at the debate, and probably won't continue to take advantage of Bailey not being at the debate, and trying to bring him down a touch, because they're trying to do that on social media right now. I think Dabrowski's team had something out there talking about how Darren was calling out Richard Irvin for not attending one of the debates in 2022, and he wasn't, he obviously wasn't there this time. But I think this could have been a mistake for Bailey's campaign had the rest of the campaigns played it right. And just moral of this campaign so far has been just every opportunity the rest of the campaigns get, they don't really capitalize on it.
Well, I'll use the first opportunity to disagree a little bit with Chris, as so prompted early on. If I were running the Bailey campaign, there's nothing to gain by having them at this debate. Plus, there's some on social media, there's some floating baggage going around, and just insinuations and personal attacks would be everything that would go on against Bailey and Delmar. I just don't think they have anything to gain with 2.5 or 3 weeks ago until election day. I just don't think they gain anything by being at the debate. And I think the others have sort of shown that they really aren't taking the opportunity, even when teed up, to attack enough to cut into it. So even if Bailey is at a ceiling with his voters, I think all he has really is maybe a couple of points by taking some good shots at the debate, but he has a lot more to lose.
No. Some other updates from the race. You did see Dabrowski release some new ads over the last week. They're pretty hard hitting. I mean, it uses the Brandon Johnson talking about how law enforcement is a sickness line, uses JB's lines about how, liars and fearmongers. He uses clips and then uses that to go after both of them. So they're decently hard hitting ads. Mostly focused on the Safety Act, mostly focusing on immigration. They're the standard, Dan Proft style. I don't think he's ever been involved with a race where he doesn't use a black backdrop and the candidate looking directly at the camera. Literally every single race Dan has run, that's exactly what they do for their ads. You never really want to be too predictable in politics, but whatever. I'll just leave it at that. They're, interesting. The question that I've heard from people is, where are we going to see them? I haven't seen them yet. I'm a pretty hard R in a targeted area, you would think, by the Dabrowski campaign, and no one that I know has seen them. So the question is, where are they being put up? Michael, I know you pointed to a press release where they talked about how it's going to be on TV, digital, and social media and radio. Again, I haven't necessarily heard from anybody that they've actually seen the ads. And that's the question with weaker fundraising than what we had hoped for and what we had been told would be happening from the Dabrowski campaign. This is where it hurts, because right now is where you need to be just plastering the airwaves with these ads to raise your name recognition. And it doesn't seem like they have the budget to be able to do so. Heidner, on the other hand, has the budget. If you look at A1s, over the last week, Heidner's raised about $500,000, much of it from himself and his family, but it's $500,000. Dabrowski's raised a little bit. Mendrick's raised nothing. Bailey's raised basically nothing. So Heidner's on the other end of this, where you see him bringing in money. So they have the cash, but I don't necessarily see much of an ad campaign or a message, or see anything in my mailbox or in my advertisements or on my TV. So again, we continue to wonder kind of where that money is going, because it seems like he has some cash, and it looks like maybe he hasn't given up like some people thought a week or two ago, but we don't really see him out there. So what's going on? I don't know. But at this point, 2.5 weeks out, it's Bailey's to lose unless somebody gets their act together.
Well, and actually, Collin, those numbers frighten me a lot, because if it's Bailey's to lose and he's not raising any money, that's frightening, because let's presume he's going to win, that the landscape is going to stay largely the same. He's got no money going into the general election against a billionaire. I don't know how he's going to start raising money if he's not doing it now. If all of the support he's getting isn't coalescing behind him to fundraise, what are they waiting for?
Yeah.
I almost wonder if they're even trying to bring money in. If they just feel like, well, we're going to win with 55% of the vote, and we'll figure that out on March 18th. It's just a strange dynamic.
I still don't think they're winning with 55% of the vote. But I also don't think that anybody's lining up to support Bailey in this general election. This is another big concern I'm having, is so much of the party, again, even if Bailey gets 55% of the vote, I mean, there's so much of this party. Even, when Irvin lost, there was a lot of the party that were like, oh, I can't support Bailey. But now you even have, like, the grassroots people are saying that I can't support Bailey. So something really, really to be concerned about going into the general election.
Yeah. Last thing I neglected to mention this, the Tribune, they've hinted now that they had some edict from on high that wouldn't let them endorse. I'd love to learn more about this unless I missed something somewhere, but they didn't endorse in the gubernatorial race, but they did say a number of nice things about Bailey specifically. Seems like they gave sort of a non-endorsement endorsement. So, giving that out there to be fair. And then Pritzker put out his first TV ad this week, 60-second long ad focusing on him. Was it Walk It, Talk It is his ad. It's mostly just a positive puff piece, but it gets his message out there and keeps his name out there. So, he's already getting ready for March 17th at 7:01. And I have to imagine the money and the attacks will start flowing almost immediately as soon as this primary is over.
It's so strange to me that he like went to Dick's Sporting Goods and bought like every like U of I like gear that he like possibly could because historically he's not done that. But then I mean even in that ad, he's wearing like U of I quarter zip and all this stuff and it's like, all right, whatever, dude.
I mean, they know one of his biggest vulnerabilities is people
Yep,
being upset that he's focused on his national ambitions. So
right.
he's got to get the Illinois thing in there as much as possible. So it's kind of like
But
Ronner
there's
wearing the
other
Carhartt, kind of like Ronner wearing the Carhartt jacket. It's a little bit like that.
but there's other schools in Illinois that would probably make more sense, like maybe one that he went to or something. I don't know.
Again, it's like the Carhartt jacket.
Okay.
All right, let's shift over to the U.S. Senate race. We won't spend as much time on this one because most of the developments are on the Democratic side, but it looks like we're seeing a couple developments here where the candidates are finally starting to attack each other. This seems like, I think we talked about this last week and we've talked about it a lot, that the theme of this primary has been too late. Like everything, whether it's candidates getting in or candidates trying to announce themselves or raise their name ID, or now trying to build a contrast message and a persuasive message 2.5, 3 weeks before election day when early voting has already begun. That seemed to be the theme of this election. But in the U.S. Senate race on the Democratic side, negative ads have basically been dominating. You've got ads going after Stratton, both from Raja directly and from now a new super PAC. You've got ads going against Raja from Stratton's super PACs. So the gloves are off, and certainly between those two candidates. And polling shows the race tightening. Now, it depends on which poll you look at. A group behind Stratton is putting out a poll that only has her down by 2, while a separate group that's not behind Stratton has her down more like 16. So the question is going to be, who do you believe in the various polls? But no matter which polls you look at, it does look like Stratton is gaining. The question is she gaining enough early enough, or is she going to be yet another candidate after March 17th who's going to say, if I just had 2 more weeks? So yeah, well, you knew when election day was. They didn't move it on you. The goalpost was not moved here. You just waited too long. That's the question I have, Chris. I'm curious if where you think that's going to land.
I mean, I think this is finally a race.
Right.
Stratton had been up on TV or the super PAC, of course. The PACs had been up on TV for weeks, and we really hadn't gotten any indicator that Stratton was really narrowing the gap here. Sure, the Lieutenant Governors Association poll is a glorified internal. That's true, but any poll that's telling us this is within 2 points, and that means it's probably closer within 5 or maybe within 7. That's a race at this point. And we've already talked about how Raja has a ceiling, and Raja really hasn't gained anything above that ceiling.
For
And
a
I
couple
still
months
think,
at this point.
yeah, for a couple months at this point. And you could tell that Raja really doesn't know how to handle this, because I think the ad that Raja came out with attacking Stratton for the PAC money, I mean, I thought that was a terrible move, because
And it was pretty weak. It was a weak hit.
it was a weak hit for one, and for two, Stratton has all of this on Raja's donors. They already have rolled out or talked about rolling out the ICE stuff. He takes donations from ICE contractors, and the fact that Raja basically takes money anybody from who's giving it away. So it really, playing on that level, you're not going to win that if you're Raja Krishnamurti. So I don't think he ever really expected to get this far to where he would have had to have gone negative. And now you're seeing it's a weak ad, it's a weak hit. The Stratton's ad that was against him, or I don't remember if it was the PAC or if it was her ad. It's hers either way. I don't remember. Hers that was more effective than Raja's ad. So I would anticipate that this is still going to be a race going into election day. One thing to monitor from now over the next 18 days is how turnout goes. If you start seeing upticks in black turnout or suburban women turnout, I mean, that's going to benefit Stratton a lot. And if I mean, I would have to look deeper into polling to see what Raja's true base is. I think it's just low information Democratic primary voters at this point. But I think that I still think that this is Stratton's race to lose. I've always said that. I think Stratton can and should win this race.
And Chris, to the point you were just making, it's in my notes to say it's hard to pinpoint exactly where the polls are right now, but people need to understand the way turnout and propensity works. Stratton's base has higher turnout numbers than Raja's base does, both because Stratton has a base and Raja, other than in his congressional district, doesn't have much of a base, especially because Indian voters are notorious for donating at high clips but have very low voter turnout percentages. And so Raja will underperform wherever the polls are, whereas Stratton will overperform wherever the polls are. My question is, will she overperform enough, or did she wait too long to do some of the things she needed to do to bump up her numbers? We'll find out very soon.
Well, I think it really not did she wait too long, but did Pritzker wait too long, right? Because he's the one that,
and he's come in with 5 million, 10 million.
Yeah.
I mean, when Pritzker cares about something, he cuts pretty large checks. Dude could have written a $25 million check here and basically buried the entire field. A lot of people are going to question why he didn't.
But at least we know, I mean, obviously it's enough to spook Raja. And I'm sure with the money that Raja has, his cash on hand, I'm sure he's pulling this kind of all the time, or at least, every few days or something. Like, he's got to know, like, hey, this is tightening. I need to attack her because she's on my heels. And I saw some stuff on Twitter last night, or X, whatever you want to call it, that some of the Democrat influencers that you kind of see on the national level have been attacking Robin Kelly and promoting Juliana. So I don't know if they're getting paid. It wouldn't surprise me if they are, or if it's organic. But either way, I mean, Stratton's got some traction right now.
Well, and but listen, don't neglect this. I mean, Raja has Tiffany Henyard's endorsement, so that's all he needs. He's good. Super mayor.
I wonder if once he saw that one, if he was like, "Oh my gosh, please delete the post."
Right. And Mike Fredericks instead of Frericks. Mike Fredericks got her endorsement for treasurer, so there you go. On the Republican side, since Chris has taken too long to get in and we're short on time, on the Republican side, Tracy continues to rack up endorsements. Evans has put out a few things. She did a mailer, looks like a second mailer, though it looks like it's hitting a tiny universe because only a few people are getting it. So it seems to be maybe even just Cook County. But she's put out some things. We're trying to be objective here and let everybody know, what's happening in the races. Still seems like, Tracy's going to come out of that solidly ahead, but we'll find out in a couple of weeks here. But, we're obviously watching the Dem race really closely because at the top of the ticket, that's going to have a huge impact on turnout. You get Stratton, to come out ahead in that primary. She's taken a lot of really far left positions that Republicans are going to want to talk about in the general election. So there's a reason why we're watching that race real close. All right, I'm going to move us on, Chris, if you're cool.
Good.
See, I even asked your permission. All right, let's go to the Comptroller race. Pritzker has also injected himself into this race because J.B. Pritzker likes democracy, but only when it doesn't impact the things he wants. So he's also trying to decide who's going to be the Illinois Comptroller in this state. The one position that's supposed to be a check and balance on the governor and the legislature. J.B. Pritzker wants his handpicked choice in that seat. We've talked about it for a while. Margaret Croak is, of course, that handpicked choice. She owes her entire career to Pritzker. He gave her multiple jobs. He got her elected to the state house. Now he's putting his thumb on the scale to get her elected to Comptroller. You think that's anybody who's ever going to dare stand up to J.B. Pritzker on anything? You're crazy, especially since her first ad is all J.B. Pritzker. And you look at her social media and her press releases and everything else, it's all how great Pritzker is over and over and over again. Looks like Margaret Croak is the front runner, to be clear, in this Democratic primary. And I'd say finally independence has become a topic in this race. Some of the other candidates are bringing it up. Some of the media is bringing it up. There's the Illinois did a story on this. Capital Facts did a story on this. Even some of the media is starting to pick it up. It's way too late. But it's something that these candidates should have been talking about. I'm sure Pritzker polls well. I know he polls well. I've seen the numbers in a Democratic primary. But Democrats and Republicans alike agree that that position is supposed to be independent, regardless of your party and your partisan leanings. And Margaret Croak is owned by J.B. Pritzker. There's no bones about it. So it's finally become a topic in that race. Probably too late to change the outcome in the primary, but I can guarantee you it will be a topic in the general election.
I mean, I think that's the interesting thing here is we're gonna know a lot more about, once March 17th is here and it passes on the 8th, or March 18th. If it's, JB for governor, Juliana Stratton for U.S. Senate, and Croak for comptroller, I think that creates a lot of opportunities for us as Republicans, especially from a messaging perspective, because it's like, well, you got Pritzker's handpicked person running for Senate, his handpicked person running for comptroller, and depending on what happens with Pritzker's favorability numbers over the course of the next 9 months, he could end up being a liability for them.
It's possible. If Republicans could mount a serious challenge to Pritzker, that'd be even more possible.
I also
Yeah, but I
think,
think also, you've
let's let
seen
Keith
it in
go.
other. Oh, sorry. Go
oh
ahead.
yeah, go ahead, Mike. Mike's got more
No, just
wisdom
real
than I
quick.
do.
I was just going to say we've seen it in other states, Marco Rubio, JD Vance, Ted Cruz, etc. Whenever they're, oh, I'm running for president, people back home kind of get annoyed by that. So you can't run for president in a vacuum. People here know, oh, well, he's running for president and he's polling at 3%. What a joke.
Yeah, again, it takes a serious Republican challenger in the governor's race to make all that information known, which is my concern. Keith, what were you going to say?
Um, so as sort of an interesting off take on this, if JB's handpicked candidates at the state level win, then he's got to keep them winning. So that means he's going to spread his cash around. If they don't win, if Croak doesn't win, if Juliana Stratton doesn't win, then he can properly sort of ignore those races because they're not his candidates. He's not bound by making sure that they win. If Stratton wins, he has got to make sure she actually wins in the general. If Croak wins, he has got to make sure she wins in the general. It means he's going to be spreading around cash and participating more in those races and not necessarily focusing solely on the governor's race, which all things being equal isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. All right, with that, let's shift to our guest who's been extremely patient with us. So thank you for that, Julie. Kept herself out of trouble, didn't jump in on any of the races, which if I was your consultant, I'd say good job. That was the right thing to do. We've got policy topics coming soon that I'd love to get your thoughts on. But first, let's talk about the 17th Congressional District. Again, for those who watch this episode, you know that we've made our platform available to candidates on the Republican side in serious races who are polling above a certain amount and raising above a certain amount. Aisle 17 is one of Republicans' best potential pickup opportunities. If we're going to actually play offense instead of just only playing defense, wouldn't that be nice if we could actually pick up some seats in Illinois? And aisle 17 is one of the best places to do that. We've had the other candidate, Dylan Vansel, on previously. We're really happy to have Julie Bickelhaupt here now. Julie, if you could tell us about your race and why you should be the candidate for Republicans, we'd love to hear it.
Sure. Yeah. Like as you say, this district seat is one of the most flippable district seats in the country. But of course, in Illinois, the last midterm when Esther Joy King ran, she was 4% short of flipping that seat. And I just think a different approach on the position itself, maybe just a little bit of different strategy, we can definitely take the seat and run with it. This is something that we need to work together once this primary is over and figure out how do we get it done. It seems like sometimes we don't bound together and work together in the ways we should in order to, actually get something done. And you see that obviously too in the governor's race, and we see that in other House and Senate, Illinois Senate seats as well. I really feel like Republicans have to really work together and figure out how to actually get it done. And I'm working hard to get through this primary. I continue to pick up people every day. And, with my agriculture background, which is, a lot of the focus I'm running on with the influence I'm running on, I guess, but, as a business owner and essentially agriculture and running a farm is a business. So we relate in a lot of ways. But it's a high economic resource for this district, but the state as well. We're made on agriculture in Illinois and the Midwest, and we need to figure out how to help really push that through and make sure that people understand the resource that it is for the rest of the economic development within the area. So I feel like we can bind that together and work together and figure out how to flip this district for sure.
Well, we've talked about this in the past that people don't focus enough on the needs of our farming community, our agricultural community. I mean, it's 3/4 of our state's land area, but nobody ever talks about it. Nobody ever focuses on it. So certainly that's a positive. I'm glad you're doing that. I know some of the issues that you focus on are affordability for working families and economic growth, especially in the areas of agriculture and manufacturing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Energy cost and affordability is for people in agriculture and farming definitely an issue, which we can align across. As a county board chair, we see that a lot as well. A lot of our constituents within the county, are below poverty levels. So we deal with that every day, trying to help people figure out how to make it to their next paycheck and to be as conservative as we can as a county in how we spend dollars and stay responsible in our budget at the end of the year. Those are some of the same things within this district. Clearly, there's some areas that have higher economic areas, and then we have lower economic areas, but we really need to make sure that those costs are aligned. Energy costs are obviously right now through the roof, and figuring that out is very important. And, bringing back some energies and making sense of that using common sense through that. We really just have to work with the resources we have in the state and maybe potentially even bring some of those back. That's important. Healthcare has been an important issue, and one that, I see as well in my own life and business, seeing that go up. We can definitely do some things at a federal level to bring back power back to the constituents, those people who own those policies. And I've heard more and more of people who have dropped health insurance. And, that is not a place we want to be in. That puts us at risk. We need to open up the free market system more and bring it back to what it used to be before we accepted or allowed the ACA to come through. It was destined to fail, and it clearly has. So I've talked to people, doctors, nurse practitioners, and asked their opinions on that as well. And they're like, we need an absolute rebuild of this. So that in itself can put dollars back in the pockets of a lot of the constituents.
Well, we said it previously when we talked about this district. I'll say it again for those watching now. When you're looking for districts to play in on offense on the Republican side, there's so many districts in Illinois right now that are trending against Republicans just because of national factors and other things. The 17th congressional district is one of the few that's actually trending towards Republicans. It's one of the few districts that are likely, or at least potential nominee for governor doesn't hurt us down ticket. It's one of the few districts where the president doesn't necessarily hurt us down ticket. And again, as I said, looking at the trend line in that district, it's gotten a few points better for Republicans over the last decade, not worse. So certainly worth watching the 17th congressional district. Julie, how can people get in touch with your campaign or just keep an eye on what you're doing? Where do you want them to look for you?
Sure. JulieForIllinois.com. I also have a Facebook page, Julie Bickelhaupt for Congress. Just reach out to us. You can send emails there as well. But definitely a flippable district. We are very red in this area. Where we start to lose ground, and I've talked to people through that too, is people not getting out to vote and thinking their vote doesn't count because they're just frustrated with the fact that we've been so close so many times and we just haven't flipped it. My recommendation is let's figure out how to get the most people out there and vote. It does matter. They've got to stand up and and there's that whole class of people who feel like elections have been rigged. Why should I vote? Well, I've told one guy, I said, let's get so many people out there to vote that they can rig it and we can still win, because I do think we can do that.
All right. Well, appreciate your thoughts on that. Let's get into more of our topics here. We've got, I think, one or two more political topics. Then we'll get into policies. This has been interesting. We don't know a lot about what's going on with Harry Benton, but what we do know for sure is that he's been kicked out of the Democratic caucus and removed from multiple committees. Not that the problems of the Democrats are really necessarily anything we care that much about, but House District 97 is, on the state level, one of the few districts that Republicans might be able to make a play in. So this becomes incredibly interesting to us. The Republicans are running again with Gabby Shanahan, a candidate who impressed many people last time around, worked her tail off, and now you've got an incumbent who was already extra vulnerable because he ran for, what was it, highway supervisor, right, Chris? I think I got it right this
Highway
time.
commissioner, yes.
Highway commissioner. So now he's got another pension on top and another taxpayer-funded paycheck on top of what he was already getting. So Benton was already more vulnerable this time than last time, and now looks like there may be something even bigger if he even indeed stays in the race. The Illinois is reporting from multiple sources, and Finkston feels pretty confident in this. So I'm not going to say allegedly. I'm gonna, stick with our boy here and trust his sources. That the reasoning for why Benton has been kicked out of the Dem caucus was allegations of sexual harassment. No one else has been able to identify that, or at least maybe has been willing to say it. Maybe they have identified it, they just haven't been willing to report it. So we'll see what comes out soon. One thing that I thought was interesting is when this was all breaking, it was the same day that the Democrats are putting through one of their, usual overly national, overly partisan bills about how Republicans and Trump need to release the Epstein files and how Republicans are covering it up. And literally the same day, nobody can get details on why they kicked Harry Benton out of their own caucus. I remember thinking just how hypocritical that was. Here's the problem, though, because our podcast is only shot once a week. I had to wait until today, and I'll give credit where it's due. Rich Miller from Capital Facts beat me to it and put something out on this, but so fine, you beat me to it, Rich. And credit to you for pointing it out, but I found that to be kind of hilarious and hypocritical. And at the same time, you're dinging Republicans. You're doing the exact same thing if you're the Democrats down in Springfield. You remove somebody from your caucus, you got to give some transparency as to why that happened. So hopefully we get some transparency soon. We'll see what happens, but 97 just got real interesting.
So Keith, I need you to stop me if I get into any legal problems with anything I say right now. I would appreciate that. No, I will not be paying. You can send a bill to Collin. So it's been alleged, rumored about Harry's fondness for the staff for a while. This is one of those things that people have said over the years that Harry Benton's been in office. So it could be something along those lines. And I think if Finkston's sources are pretty firm in that, and Patrick's pretty firm in that, I wouldn't have any reason to disagree with that. Harry's also someone who's been very stubborn in his time in office, I would say. And I don't know if he's actually going to resign. It's the best case scenario for Dems that he does resign because they don't want to run into another Mike Hastings situation where you have a district that may or may not be in play. Now it is in play and the Republican can win the district. I don't know if the House Dems really want that. I think if it's as bad as people think it may be, perhaps, they would probably do everything in their power to just get this guy to resign. They'll put somebody else in there and they'll bankroll them to the tune of $1 million. And that would be the most likely favorable scenario for Democrats to pull off this seat. If Harry sticks to his guns and doesn't resign, this is going to be the race for Republicans to pick up.
I mean, we said the same thing with Hastings. And as people have pointed out on our internal Discord, Republicans fumbled the ball on that. But the key difference is against Hastings, Republicans fumbled the ball by not having a serious challenger to be able to make that a race. And that became really our biggest Achilles heel in trying to hold Hastings accountable. In this case, you've got Gabby Shanahan, who's a much stronger candidate, who's already run before. So this is not the same as the Hastings situation, but it is obviously going to be a tough Republican year. Plus, that district does play less favorably for us in off years, a dynamic we've talked about that lately Republicans have done better in presidential years. And that's one of those districts where we actually see about a 2 point swing in off years towards Democrats. So it's going to play like a D6 as a district. So then the question will be, how can Republicans make Benton's negative so high to overcome that 6 point deficit to start? So just to give everybody the data on the district, it's certainly a possibility, but we're going to have to run, a real strong race if we're going to flip that seat.
I'm gonna help you here, Colin. I don't think you meant what you said. I think you did, but I think you were maybe mistaken the way you worded it. I don't think the problem against Hastings was necessarily the candidate they put up against him, because I think Pat Sheehan's a wonderful state representative. And I thought he was a wonderful candidate for state senate against Hastings. I think the problem with the Hastings district was mostly that's a D plus 10, D plus 12 even a few years ago that you were trying to shift to be an R plus something. This is like a D. I would have to pull up the numbers, but like it's like a
It's
D
officially a
plus 3.
D3, but we say it's
Yeah.
going to play like a D6. Trump lost it by 4.
Okay, so that is a different district. That is a closer district than the Hastings district. Because Hastings district has so many strong African American communities on the east side of it. That was, I think, the math problem with the Hastings district.
Yeah.
You don't have
And
that.
you keep filibustering me here, so I'm going to jump in. Let me just say you are correct. So let me clarify here. I was thinking of the last race against Hastings and our weak candidate and an inability to challenge Hastings in the last race. You are correct. The problem in the Sheehan race was we had a good candidate, but unfortunately we didn't come into play until like the last couple weeks. Whereas if we'd actually played in that race, we said this repeatedly, we might have actually been able to take it up. So I was flipping the years in my head. So I'm sorry, Pat. Chris is right. I was wrong on that one. I mixed up the years in my head.
You are correct on that. The problem in 24 was we had a terrible candidate.
Yeah. So I just was thinking about that race. And you're right. It wasn't actually the first time we had Hastings. All right. Let's keep moving along here. Last one, last political one. So AFP Illinois has started to spend, I say spend big in the title here, but let's be real. In today's politics, it's actually not that big, but for Republicans, this is big spending. They've come in on a handful of races in Illinois that the state chapter is spending on. So the biggest ones that people have been watching are Senate District 33. They've been spending money for Brueggelman's in that race. And then they've also been spending for, let me get this right here, Paul Jacobs in his Senate race, and then Noreen Hammond and Charlie Meyer in the House races. Looks like, I don't have the latest total, but around 120K, maybe 150K now, that has been at least reported as being spent. So decent amount of money, mostly looks like mail and some digital is being spent here. Michael, I know this has had some blowback by some of the conservatives who are unhappy that they're coming in a couple of these races, especially Noreen's race. But interested to see which races they're coming in on. And obviously, AFP has been very closely tied to the Republican Party in this state, doing joint events and sitting in strategy sessions and leading the spending in some of these Republican races. So I don't know why some of these conservatives are surprised that AFP Illinois would be coming in as basically an arm of the Republican Party in this state. But I guess people don't pay attention and they got shocked by it. Is that right, Michael?
I don't know. I think that, the Freedom Caucus obviously is aggravated about some of these because they're, actively involved on the other side of those races.
But what do they think was
So,
going to happen? I mean, AFP is run by a former Ronner staffer. Like, they're not coming in for your candidate in that race.
well, also I think it's exacerbated by the fact that, Tom DeVore was like actively attacking AFP staff like by name. Like you can't do that and then expect them to just like sit. I mean, AFP's got unlimited resources. They can spend as much money as they want to a degree because, they're funded by Koch brothers and others, right? They always come, if they come into something, they're going to come in big. And, Freedom Caucus doesn't have the money to combat that. These, upstart campaigns that are trying to primary incumbents don't have the money. So they're just going AFP's just going to flood the zone.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing.
I don't blame them for doing it. It's how you build influence. It's how you play the political game. But this is why we tell candidates get out there and fundraise. Because what's the quote that I like to use a lot that I stole from Morton Blackwell? You can't change the world if you can't pay the rent. I mean, if you can't raise money for your campaign, then you can't put your message in front of voters, and then an outside organization can come in and swamp you. And what are you going to do?
Michael, I would be very interested. This is not political advice. I'll be very interested if the Freedom Caucus started using some Trumpian MAGA messaging that they're taking on the big Koch brothers lobby and the corporate special interests. If I see Colin Mosley start talking like me about the Koch brothers, I would be very happy to see that. Mosley, this is a challenge to you. If you are actually MAGA, you are going to call out the Koch brothers for getting involved in Republican Party politics.
Okay, we'll see what happens there. All right, now let's get into policy. And hopefully this gives a chance for all of our guests to participate. So it's not just me, Chris, and Michael droning on and boring Julie and Chris, or Julie and Keith. Let's talk. We'll start with the Bears. I kind of hate to do it, to be honest. I'm kind of sick of talking about the Bears, to be honest, but it's every headline, and it has been for the last couple weeks here. So we got to talk about it. It's Thursday, so I don't know yet how the bill and the Indiana Senate has performed, but I assume it's going to pass with flying colors. Indiana's making a serious play here, and I'll give credit where it's due. The Bears continued to try to build leverage and failed over the course of the last couple of years, but it seems like this Indiana gamut has finally actually created the leverage that they've been seeking. So I will give them credit for that. It has forced people in Illinois to finally take this seriously a little bit. Some of the people like Pritzker and Dems down in Springfield are like, oh no, we've been negotiating in good faith for years. It's like, nah, actually you haven't. But at least now you finally are, I guess. So the question is going to be, can Illinois keep the Bears in Illinois? Pritzker has made it clear it won't be in Chicago. So that's really the final thing here is, can Chicago legislators cast a vote to keep the Bears in Illinois versus going to Indiana? They're not going to Chicago. So your choices right now are Arlington Heights or Hammond. Where do you want the Bears to be? And it's really going to come down to the Chicago legislators, because it doesn't look like Welsh is going to change his rule that it has to have support of 60 Dems to make it to the floor, which means you're going to have Chicago Democrats vote for the Bears to go to Arlington Heights, which many of us have said since the beginning is a near impossibility. And that's, where the negotiations have had to be for a long time now, and none of us know where those are because it's all been done behind closed doors. So nobody really knows what's actually happening. Anybody but Chris have thoughts on the Bears, since Chris is a Packers fan?
I think Illinois blew it, and I think that ship has largely sailed. They're going to see what they can get out of Indiana, and Indiana is doing pretty good as a state, and they're going to throw everything they can at the Bears. And quite frankly, with the amount of money that Illinois just spends at everything, I'm shocked that Pritzker and the legislature didn't take this more seriously sooner. And now I think someone else has butted them in line, and they're going to get a good shot at it. If the Hammond site turns out to work, I think the legislature in Indiana is going to give them everything they want, and I think they're going to move.
I mean, it really comes down to Pritzker's national ambitions. I think if Pritzker was not running for president, he probably would have taken this a bit more seriously and fought for it a little bit more. But I think the calculation for Pritzker and his team is, you can't be the guy running for president who's a billionaire who just gave tax breaks to a billionaire of NFL franchise. So to me, I think this. And I don't think I'm as certain as you, Keith, that the Indiana's a done deal, just because, with all the tax hikes and everything else that Indiana voters are going to have to swallow here, it's not as favorable of an option for Indiana as it's been sold to be to their people. So there's still a chance that they could sort of rise up and oppose this. But the fact that it's even a conversation is unacceptable. And that's where I think, yet again, Pritzker's national ambitions have screwed the people of Illinois, where if he actually cared about Illinois, if he was actually focused on Illinois, he would have made sure this deal was done a long time ago. But again, it's all about optics for J.B. Pritzker, so he can, increase his 2% vote share for president. And yet again, it's the taxpayers of Illinois who are going to get screwed.
Well, what do you think? The bigger liability then in your mind is that, like, we give the Bears like a break as opposed to like the Bears leaving Illinois for Indiana? I guess it's maybe like a short-term versus long-term thing, right?
Yeah.
Because in the short term, if you run for re-election for governor and the attack is, the Bears left Illinois on Pritzker's watch, like, okay, there's an opening there. But then on the presidential side of things, you could say, well, he bailed out an NFL team. So
Yeah,
I guess
listen, Pritzker's not worried about his reelect. I mean,
obviously.
they're just not. So, what the only poll that's been public is the Emerson poll that tested Bailey against Pritzker head to head, and Bailey was losing by 20. And I've seen 3 other polls that come near those numbers. So Pritzker's not worried about his reelection at the current rate the gubernatorial race is going. So yeah, you take a ding for Illinois losing the Bears. Yeah, he'll lose a few points in his race because of that. But all he cares about is his national run. So he'll sacrifice a few points in his gubernatorial race to maximize his odds to be president.
I would say if that does go to Indiana, it's too bad for Chicago and the effects it's going to have on it. But I do think it can be good for the Republican gubernatorial race. So if he wants to help us out a little bit, I say go for it.
Well, and I think Julie, you see this even in your district. Obviously, you guys are nowhere near Arlington Heights or Chicago, but it's a problem in Illinois as a anti-business state. This is a stark reminder of the problems in Illinois. Chris rightfully pointed out, whether it was last week or the week before, that the sort of what we try to do in this podcast, which is give information to Republicans and conservatives, that doesn't play because there's just stats after stats after stats and data after data. And yeah, Illinois stinks on almost every business metric and fiscal metric, but voters, that's just not getting their attention. Illinois lost the Bears, that gets voters' attention. And so, this is something that can really help illustrate, even as far out in your district, the horrible business climate in Illinois, which frankly your general election opponent has supported these, increases in taxes, increases in spending, anti-business environment. He's supported it in DC, and he's certainly supported the politicians who've made it happen in Illinois. So this is the kind of thing that can resonate throughout the whole state.
Well, and on that topic, not to change subjects, but when Pritzker's talking about bringing nuclear energy back to Illinois and planting these businesses here, I don't know what he's thinking. He's chasing the bears away. No one in their right mind is going to plant a business here, especially when it's energy and they can just fish it right into our what we're already doing. That's happening already. No one's going to put a business here. I think his lengthy goals there are ridiculous.
Yeah, well, you saw, I mean, we've got a topic later on today, but you've also seen it with the data centers. And, the only way that Pritzker can bring businesses to the state are to give gigantic tax breaks to those businesses. Meanwhile, you suckers like me who own businesses in Illinois, or Julie, obviously officially on your end too, we suckers who stick around, we don't get tax breaks. We just keep paying higher and higher taxes so Pritzker can, go do another ribbon cutting with somebody else he gives our tax dollars to.
I actually think this Bears is it's a bad calculus even at the national level. I think sports teams, professional sports teams, have a unique calculus. This is Chicago Bears. This is emblematic of Chicago and Illinois. You lose this, they've always been here. I mean, they're the monsters of the Midway. Well, mostly been here. They're the monsters of the Midway. You lose it, everyone's going to be hanging this around his head. I don't think people would vote against him or not vote for him if you keep the Chicago Bears any more than Chicago White Sox or Blackhawks or Cubs. They're unique sorts of businesses that are as much cultural as they are business. But certainly if you don't keep the Bears, people are going to hang this around his neck as he couldn't even keep the Chicago Bears that had the city name. How are you going to keep any business anywhere? This is a terrible calculus. And the tax dollars that are lost, ridiculous. And I think they're going to hang this around his head even more than if he tried to keep the Bears.
Yeah.
I just
Chris,
have one quick comment.
You're allowed to say one quick thing. That's it.
I actually think that some Chicago legislators may be thinking it's better for the Bears in Hammond, Indiana than it is for them in Arlington Heights. Because the Hammond, Indiana site's about a mile away from Chicago city limits. And if you really wanted to develop the east side and Hegewisch like they've been talking about doing since the steel mills closed, that would be a good opportunity to do things like that. So I'm just thinking, maybe some Chicago legislators on the east side are thinking it's better for the Bears to be in Hammond than in Arlington Heights, which is what, 30 minutes outside city limits as opposed to 5? Just an idea.
I mean, you don't have as easy access via rail, but it's not a bad point, Chris. What I've seen is there's so many roads to no by Democrats in Chicago. It's, well, what do we do about the current Soldier Field? Or, well, why aren't they at the Michael Reese site? Or, well, what Chris just said. Or, well, there's a whole lot of reasons to vote no on this. Again, this ain't going to happen unless Pritzker or somebody with some juice down in Springfield starts twisting arms. That's the only way this happens. And so far, we haven't seen signs of it.
You don't think Brandon can twist some arms for us, Brandon Johnson?
He seems not to care either, so I don't think he's going to do it. All right, let's go to our next topic here. This is something that I've noticed, and it's been brought up to me repeatedly now over the last week by mayors, by staffers in municipalities and local governments. It's certainly not something that's getting enough attention, but is something that is bubbling up, which is the anger and frustration at municipalities, especially, but all local governments, at Pritzker's heavy-handedness, especially in his state of the state and some of his budget decisions. And then some of the bills that have been filed after. There is a huge push right now down in Springfield to overrule the powers of municipalities and local governments, even counties. We've got a county leader here today. This is something we've talked about over the years, the many mandates that come down from Springfield, but this is something different. This is a new thing that we haven't seen in the past, where it looks like Democrats in control from Pritzker on down are saying, you know what, we're sick and tired of waiting for you municipalities and townships and counties and schools to do things the way we want you to do it. So we're just going to mandate it from top down. We talked about it in Pritzker's speech about how in housing he wants to mandate zoning for all of the state, whether you're home rule or not, whether you have your own zoning code, your own rules and regulations or not. Pritzker wants to regulate that the way he wants it, which obviously IML and all the municipal conferences and municipal leaders are super unhappy about. Obviously, Pritzker's cutting LGDF yet again. So now they're going to get even less funding, which means they got to go to raise your property taxes to make up for that. There's a few other things in Pritzker's budget that touch on this. And then obviously we've got solar and energy preemption, which IML's been talking about, where they want to dictate those rules from Springfield and not give you a say as a local unit of government. And then there's a couple bills. I'll do this quickly, but just in the last week I've seen these. Christina Castro has a bill that like an idiot, I didn't save the bill number, but you can look it up. That amends the Illinois Municipal Code and makes all municipalities levy impact fees that are only based on what DECIO sets. You can't set your own impact fees, or you have very little ability to set your own impact fees on development. And those are important fees that municipalities use to fund infrastructure for those developments. But whatever, Springfield wants to say, no, you can only levy the fees we tell you. Cam Buckner has a bill, HB 5626, again, amending the municipal code that directly relates to how lots can be zoned, and on any lot of certain sizes, they have to require a certain number of dwelling units. It can't just be one. You can read into it. There's a bit more on that. Javier Cervantes, Chris, correct me if you need to. Thank you. Senate Bill 4064, again, amending the municipal code, saying that you can't require more than 0.5 automobile parking spaces per multifamily dwelling unit, which, by the way, makes sense in urban areas. But you've got these urban Democrats who have never stepped foot in a suburban area, let alone a rural area, who want to set one size fits all rules for the whole state when they might make a lot of sense in Chicago or next to a train station. Like, I get it. There are areas where the parking space regulations hold back development. So I do understand where this came from. But the misnomer here is the idea that we have to set one size fits all rules and regulations for a state as large as Illinois and as diverse as Illinois. And whenever you give government control of, let's say, housing, it doesn't go well. Just Google the Chicago Housing Authority. Every week there's a new controversy, a new problem. Just in the last week, a story was put up in Block Club where there was somebody who said a vacant property next to where they lived was being used as a drug stash house. And they called the 311, the police, their aldermen, CHA, a private company. No one cared. They all said you got to talk to somebody else. I mean, when you give a central authority control over housing in a large geographical area, they just can't keep up. It's just not possible. And yet here we go. That seems to be the rule right now down in Springfield is a whole bunch of Springfield Democrats, starting with Pritzker, want to just say, this is how you're going to run your municipality. I can tell you, just directly, I have heard from dozens of mayors and local leaders who are incredibly angry about this.
I think if there's any level of stark contrast to the Democrat philosophy and the Republican philosophy, this is really it. Emblematic of both the philosophies, the Democratic Party believes the best path is centralized control, centralized planning, government control, big government telling everyone else what to do because they know better. Republicans generally believe in the smallest unit of government being able to decide for their folks, their constituents, their communities, the best way to go about things. And this is emblematic of that. This shouldn't shock anyone. But if the Republicans are not using this to define why we're Republicans and we disagree with the Democratic philosophy, they're not using it. Shame on them, because the Democrats in Springfield are giving us this as on a platter.
Well,
And
and
some
I
of the
also,
most some of those powerful people out in the real world are your local mayors, your county leaders, your township leaders. Like they're some of the few people that lawmakers used to actually listen to. Seems like that might be changing now. But you want to get an ally on the Republican side who actually has some political capital to use to help you get elected. It's your local mayors. It's your local township and county leaders. So if Democrats want to so actively attack them from Springfield, you candidates running for office, you should be burning up the phone lines to your mayors, because there's no better time than right now to get their endorsement and their support in your race.
yeah, I
So
mean,
yeah,
there's no.
Hold on, let's let Julie
oh,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry. No, it's okay. No, absolutely. And we're seeing this obviously at the county level. And I can say that just from the things that have come through at the state level, controlling our zoning and our codes as far as solar and wind go, and now down to the battery storage. We really have no ability to keep any of that from happening. All we can do is control the fees in which we place upon businesses wanting to come in and do that. And that's what they're trying to do with virtually everything, and at a county level, we're a balanced budget. We're in the black. And, rules, regulations, red tape, that's what they want to give us, and they want to force down our throats. And they also want to take control, like you say, over every detail and decision. When we're doing it right and they're doing it wrong, they need to take a few lessons from counties and cities that are actually balancing their budgets and step away a little bit. But, with those state laws, we have really our hands are tied. And unfortunately, I'm not sure what you do to back that up. But, the closer and closer and the more that they do to go in that direction, the more we lose our ability to have some control. And we're more in that socialism sort of area, which is frightening. And we need to figure out how to work against them. And obviously, as Keith kind of brought that, Republicans are going to be the answer to that. And what's that swinging point to when people finally put their foot down and say, you've already screwed up the state. We're not going to let you screw up our counties and our towns as well.
Julie, you make a good point. I mean, one of the few levels of government that actually still works in this state is local government. Now, we have too many units of government in this state. We certainly have to work on that. But you look at what's working in Illinois, and there's not a lot. But certainly, there's a whole lot of municipalities. There's a lot of counties, many townships that are doing things the right way. I even contend there are a lot of school districts and other units of government that are doing things the right way. But and more Springfield, who's clearly not doing things the right way, wants to take over control and ruin even those levels of government. Michael, you keep trying to jump in. Go ahead, man.
I just think, yeah, there's no respect for local control out of Springfield. You're seeing it at every level. And, it's unfortunate. You go on social media, you watch, live streams of these county board meetings or village or city meetings, and, constituents are aggravated with their local leaders. But really, a lot of times it's Springfield's fault because they're tying their hands and there's nothing that they can do about it. We can't really deny if somebody wants to come in and put solar panels across the street from your house. Well, the state of Illinois says we don't really have a say in the matter. So that's the issue. And
Yeah, I mean, I want to piggyback off what Keith said. I had something that I was tagged to talk about later in the episode, but Keith gave me an opening here, so I'll just do it here instead. Keith talks about the Republican approach. I noted a few bills that Republicans promoted over the last week that are exactly what Keith talked about, trying to encourage public good, but do so not with the heavy hand of government, but with incentives and support. Nicole Laha, a very important issue to her is disabled individuals, and obviously she has a daughter. And by the way, her daughter is like the cutest thing ever, but whatever. It's not the topic for today, but it's an important issue to her personally. And she's got legislation that, I know we have differences of opinions in the dignity in pay. Michael, I know that's been a big thing you've talked about and I've talked about, but Nicole has her position in that. But here's the cool thing. She noted that businesses who had been employing these individuals who have disabilities via the 14C certificates The state of Illinois had put together a fund to help them make this transition to give those individuals the minimum wage instead of a sub-minimum wage, but it only put $2 million in there and it got eaten up almost immediately. And so now there's only 80%, or I'm sorry, 80% of the providers never even got any funding. So she wants to go put more money into that fund, again, to support this move. Instead of just saying, you know what, let's just mandate something, which did happen. But her position is let's help these businesses. Let's incentivize these businesses who are doing the right thing and hiring disabled individuals and bringing them in and giving them an opportunity to have dignity and careers and work. Let's support them and help them and encourage that good behavior. That's the Republican way of doing it instead of the Democrat way of we're just going to mandate it. And if you don't do it, we'll fine you. Well, then those businesses go elsewhere or just shut their doors. Curran also had a bill that was very similar. His was Senate Bill 3855, John Curran, where this was in looks like in partnership with the American Council of Engineering Companies of Illinois, our buddy Kevin Artle, where it's creating a scholarship for engineering students, and it is for Illinois universities, so they can attend Illinois universities, but in order to qualify, they have to work at least 3 years post-graduation in Illinois. Like, this is awesome. I love this. Let's incentivize students to go to Illinois colleges and then stay in Illinois. These are tax breaks for those students, opportunities for those students. I know it supported the bill. The chief co-sponsor is Don DeWitt. Another co-sponsor, Seth Lewis. Like, this is the Republican perspective, and I love it. We don't do enough of this. We're like, you know what? Let's go out and incentivize good behavior, create opportunities for people, especially those in lower income communities or disadvantaged communities, or in the case of Nicola Hosbill's disabled individuals. This is what Republicans ought to be doing, and it's a great example for those of you in office. Let's go out there and show Republicans care and Republicans have solutions, because you can push forward market-based solutions even through legislation. There's been this misnomer that Democrats can do this because they believe in big government and Republicans can't. No, you can pursue solutions that aren't government-centered solutions, big top-down solutions. You can still do your job as a legislator and push forward solutions to the problems that everyday families face today. And these are two great examples of that. All right, I talked everybody to sleep with that. So I'm going to take us to the next topic here. This is one I've wanted to talk about for a while because I've been seeing study after study, poll after poll, research after research that's pointed to this. And we finally have a chance to talk about it on one of these episodes. Gallup is the latest that just came out. I'm going to have Lane bring up some things on screen that will show you. Gallup tests this every single year. And this last year, they found that a record high of Americans identify as independent, 45%. Lane's going to bring up a chart from 1988 to 2025. I apologize to those who are on the panel here. You won't see it, but you do have the link. You can pull up the Gallup link on your own if you want. But you can see there in that chart, since 1988, though it looks like 1990 on there. The numbers stayed relatively even. They bounced around a little bit, but then starting in the 2010s, you can see just how much party identification for Republicans and Democrats dropped and independents surged. This is something we're seeing all throughout the country. I'm seeing it in poll after poll. Voters are abandoning both political parties, whether it's because they don't like the policies that those parties are putting forward, which is especially true of the left because the left is moving further left, or they don't like the personalities of those parties, which is especially true on the Republican side, where they don't like, let's say, maybe the president, or they don't like some of our candidates for office. They don't like the Republican brand. Whatever the reason is, it's different on each side, but it arrives to the same conclusion, which is the average voter nowadays is more independent than they've ever been. And you can see, if you look at this, this isn't something that's just to one demographic by age. You can see Gen Z, of course, leads the way at 56% independent, millennials 54% independent, but Gen X is still 42% independent, which leads both political parties. Baby boomers is tied between Republican, Democrat, and independent. And then, yes, the silent generation is a little bit more partisan, but you can see how much this carries. And by the way, the next thing I want to point out is those Gen Zers, those younger people, they stick around and stay independent. This is the highest rate. This is in the article from Gallup. The highest rate of political independence from younger adults that we've ever seen. 56% of Gen Z adults identify as independents. If you go back to 2012, it was only 47 of millennials at that age. So it's 9 points higher for Gen Z. If you go back to 1992, when Gen Xers were that same age, it was only 40%. So yes, young people are always more independent, but they're even more independent nowadays. So this is something that's going to be more and more in our politics as those Gen Zers grow up. I'm almost done here, and we'll open it up to everybody else's thoughts. Second to last thing I want, or third to last thing I want Lane to show you on screen is this table here of party identification and leanings. Because what we're seeing is that these independents are leaning more Democrat. Over the last year, it's been a 3% change. Those independents have become 3% less towards Republicans and 3% more towards Democrats. So yes, there are more people who are independent, but right now, those independents are leaning Democrat, which is actually a rare thing. Usually they lean Republican. So that's something Republicans are going to have to work on. Second to last thing is that this is recent. This has only happened over the last few quarters. If you look at what Lane just brings up on screen, over the last 2 years, you can see that actually leaning Republican, leaning Democrat stayed kind of consistent until 2025, Q2, Q3, Q4. You can see how those numbers have changed dramatically. And this is what we're talking about. Trump came in office. We were actually still riding a wave of voters who wanted us to change the economy from Biden and the Democrats. But here we are a year plus in, they're starting to lose faith and they're getting frustrated by ICE and immigration. And you see how quickly these numbers are changing. That should scare people that it wasn't always this bad, but over the last 3 quarters, these numbers have gotten real bad for Republicans. Last thing I'll have Lane bring up is a chart of by political party. And here you can see that while Republicans have gotten a little bit more conservative over the last, 30 years, from 58% to 77% more conservative. Amongst Democrats, that's where the big changes happen. They become significantly more liberal. This is a thing that we've talked about. Even Chris has admitted that while you have seen some change amongst Republicans and Republicans getting more conservative, the big change is Democrats have gotten super progressive. On the Democratic side, it's an ideological problem, as you can see. All right, so that was a lot to lay the groundwork. Take this any direction you guys would like on the panel, but the topic being that Americans, Illinoisans, are more independent than ever. What are your thoughts on that?
None of this really shocks me. I think right now, everyone perceives both parties as looking for a fight. And for every reason, broadening it out, that when you had problems with the NBA injecting politics into basketball and the NFL with Colin Kaepernick, you started losing viewership. People just don't have time in their lives to deal with everyone fighting all the time. And they just want people to get along and get results for people. And at the end of the day, I think most people are probably in the range of not junkies like us, Julie accepted because she's obviously an elected official and doing a job. But for the rest of us, you know what? They don't want the fight. They want government to set good policies so their families can live and succeed in their communities, and then government to sort of stay out of their lives. And we just keep injecting politics into absolutely everything. And they are sick of the fight. And these days, look, for as many reasons as people love President Trump, he is perceived as a fighter, but he wants to fight on everything. And I think people may be getting weary of it, and they just don't want the fight all the time. And with Democrats being the party of giving everything away and being, hey, government will give you stuff, people edge towards the give you stuff over the everything is a fight. And so I don't think any of this is really a surprise. And I think just for us political junkies, we're the ones in the middle who parse all these policies and the rest, when everyone else just wants government to set good policies and get out of their lives.
Well, and Keith, I think to that point, there's a big frustration from a lot of voters that basically both parties, their only platform is to hate the other side or throw the other side in jail. I don't remember who put out, might have been the Bee or somebody who put something out that was like, Republican platform, we're going to jail these people, and Democrat platform, we're going to jail these people. And like, that's really where we're at now, where neither party seems super interested in actually pushing forward policies and doing things that are going to make people's lives better. It's really just about, airing grievances and hating the other side. And I know we're in a primary season now, so whatever. But really, what you said, Keith, is accurate, that voters want leaders, strong leaders who will go out and get things done and make their lives better. And the more that both parties, I'll admit this as a Republican, the more that both parties prove that we're incapable of doing that, voters more and more say, fine, then I'm done with both of your parties. I get this too. This didn't shock me either, but I think it ought to be a wake up call to Republicans. We're speaking to our team right now, that we've got to do a better job of delivering results for the people of Illinois and for the people of this country. If you want voters to vote for you, that's what they're demanding and frankly crying out for. Show them how you're going to make their lives better, and they'll reward you with a vote for it.
I want to say a few things here. I agree on a lot of those things. And a lot of what I try to focus on, and I do this because I feel like I'd like that to be seen by all politicians, is 80% of the things that we can all agree on are the things we need to focus on. And like you said, I think most people are tired of hearing the far left rhetoric or the far right rhetoric, and really hitting people and knocking them down rather than just finding solutions and fixing problems. People just want someone that's out there to work for them and deal with the everyday issues. Some of these things that get talked about on the far sides are things that most normal people that live everyday lives, middle class, low class, they don't care about them, and they're tired of hearing about them, and they just want their bills to be lower and their life to be easier and less red tape, and less regulation. Even for the people who, like you say, Keith, think they want those socialism programs, once they get in there and they realize, they're the ones paying for those, or they're going to be, they don't make sense anymore. So hopefully there's a turnaround on that. But I do think if you can talk to people on both sides about what can we agree really needs to be done is important to us, we get rid of that rhetoric, and hopefully at a higher level, we can quiet that as well.
Yeah.
I think from the Gen Z perspective, there's a sort of nihilism when it comes to the political process at this point. You get a lot of young males and young females as well of Gen Z who moved over to vote for Trump in 2024, and a lot of them aren't satisfied with how Trump's performed. And that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with them falling themselves into political middle. In fact, I would argue that many Gen Z find themselves on the political extremes, be it on the extreme left or the extreme right. And they find the two parties as sort of pawns of a singular system which aims to keep them down and doesn't want. They serve a different interest than theirs. They serve a corporate interest. They serve some type of greater interest in the American people. So I think for Gen Z, I wouldn't necessarily consider it to be part of like okay, I'm a centrist. I think the Democratic Party and Republican Party both hate me. That's true, but it isn't necessarily just because they're just not getting accomplished, or too extreme. In fact, it's because nothing's getting accomplished, and young voters consider both parties to be against them.
Fair points. I mean, I think this is something that I would like Republicans in Illinois to take note of, because lately there's been another resurgence led by a certain individual, pushing this narrative that all we got to do to win in November is turn out our base, when the reality is the vast majority of people aren't voting on March 17th. They're voting in November. And so if you can only play to a March 17th audience, no, actually, that doesn't make you electable in the general. Tom DeVore, I'll say his name. I'm sure I'll get some angry texts, maybe not. But he keeps saying, well, look, because now he's publicly come out for Bailey Del Mar. He says, well, look, if you can't win in a primary, if you can't, appeal to a primary audience, then how could you appeal to a general audience? It's like, actually, it's the exact opposite. Because as Chris has said, this is probably going to be a record low turnout in this Republican primary audience. And that looks nothing like your general election audience. When we see data like this, that more and more people are rejecting both political parties, these are general election voters. They're not going to go pull a primary ballot. And so, yes, there's a problem. If you have a candidate who can only play to a primary audience, that is a problem in the general election. And guess what? No, you can't win just by turning out your base in a state like Illinois. That's just going to lead to yet another loss, because you've tried that over and over and over. Every cycle you try that tactic, and every cycle that tactic fails. But here you are yet again peddling your lies so you can get some extra Facebook clicks, because you make money off of Facebook clicks, saying all we got to do is turn out the base. Guess what? You're lying to people. You know it, by the way. You're giving them oversimplified numbers to prove your point, when actually those numbers disprove your point, but you're hoping people aren't smart enough to figure it out. You're leading Republicans off a cliff to yet another loss, but you don't care because you'll still make money because they'll keep clicking like on your posts.
Collin, on that, let me give a little bit of props certainly to Tom DeVore. At least I will say, well, I agree with your general premise. The general election looks very different than the primary, and just getting out our voters and not appealing to the independents or the center or that 30 to 40 or more % of the electorate that is really undecided and will vote in individual candidates on individual issues. It's a fool's errand to win in the general election and not appeal to that. Tom is at least getting out there and calling out Republicans directly, that we are all complaining, but if you don't get out to vote in your primary, if you don't get out to vote as a base voter, then we don't have a chance. That's how I sort of look at it. And truthfully, we know the Republicans have been underperforming, and we know the Republicans turn out less and less in every election, and we know how Republicans eat their own. We're really good at that. We tear each other apart in the primary, and then we refuse to vote. Unlike the Democrats, who after the primary coalesce around the not Republican voter. Republicans are terrible at that. We don't do that. We don't come out to vote. We skip and undervote in ballots. I will at least suggest that I'll take that as a good point from Tom. Republicans have to show up or we're not going to have a chance. We do have to broaden our appeal, but Republicans have to show up.
If that was the point being made, I have actually backed up Tom on some things he said in the past. And I've taken heat for it. I'll back you up if you say the right thing. I'll go against you if you say the wrong thing, regardless of who you are. So I have said he's right in the past, but this time, unfortunately, Keith, that's not the angle they're taking. Even Del Mar has been parroting this, that he said, we don't have to win in Chicago and Cook County. We just got to turn out our base. Like, this is destructive. The more that Tom peddles this, that Del Mar and Bailey and the team peddle this, that it's all you have to do is win the base. The data doesn't back it up. And if you can play to a primary audience, good. That's part of the game. You have to win a primary, and Bailey's winning the primary. We've given him credit for that. But if you want to win the general, if you want all of us to unify behind you saying you know how to win a general, the way to do that is to tell us and show us that you actually know how to win a general. But if you don't understand the fact that more and more Americans, more and more Illinoisans are independent and pulling away from the political parties, pulling away from the Republican Party, if you can't demonstrate that you understand that, then I don't blame Republicans for saying, yeah, this is what we said. You can't win because you clearly don't understand how to win in November. This is basic politics that people running for school board understand, but you want to run for governor and you don't seem to get this. So if that was what they were saying, Keith, then I'd be giving them credit, but that's not what they're saying, sadly. All right, talk this to death. Let's go to our second to last segment, which is news you can use. So I will continue my fast talking ways and get us through this, but there's a number of bills and news stories you all need to know about in your campaign, in your political organizations, things you should be highlighting. Let's go through them. So first, we'll start with some bad bills. Let's talk about Senate Bill 3966. These are some far left Democrats, like Chris's favorite Democrat, Rachel Ventura, who want to block the federal scholarship tax credit. I know this makes Michael super happy that we've talked about in the past that some of the newspapers and media outlets and even people like Mendoza and other elected leaders are saying we should opt into this because it's money that is already going to be taken by the federal government regardless of what Illinois does. So why don't we let that money flow to students in this state? But Democrats are filing a bill to completely block that in Illinois. But here's the second thing that I want to add to this because I picked this up, and I'll give Annie Frey credit. She also picked this up because she posted this on social media. Pritzker is calling for when it comes to the tariffs. He's asked for, using an invoice, money back from the federal government, and he picked $1,700. And for a second, I thought about it, because if you look at the study or the thing that Pritzker pointed to, they actually say that the range for tariffs that it has cost Illinoisans is within a few $100s of that number, but they didn't say 1,700. Pritzker picked 1,700. And you got to understand, Pritzker is 100% a political animal. He doesn't do anything without having thought it through politically. So why did Pritzker pick 1,700? Because it's the exact same number as this federal scholarship tax credit. And remember last week in Pritzker's speech where he said, Republicans, if you want any money, You got to go to Trump and the federal government and demand Illinois get its money back from the federal government. It's not an accident that Pritzker picked $1,700 for the tariffs. If you think there's any world in which J.B. Pritzker is going to sign up for this tax credit program, you are crazy. He just told you it by picking this $1,700 number that he's going to just play politics and blame it on the Republicans and Trump and not actually opt in. It's a guaranteed ticket to the bank. There's no way Pritzker opts into this thing. Pausing for thoughts. Well, even Michael had no thoughts. All right, I'll keep going. Let's go to the next one. So Senate Democrats want to push a bill that will raise your grocery prices. I've generally been a decent fan of Willie Preston's for a Democrat, but it's his bill and it's wrong. It's Senate Bill 2737. There's a few others there, Harmon, Morrison, Ventura, who are joining him on that. And the idea is that if there's a coupon in a smartphone, then it also needs to be a price available as a paper coupon. But what that's missing is that there are digital coupons that are provided by manufacturers and different products. And so what rightfully so, who's the group that came out on this? Hold on. ARMA has come out and said, if you do this, we have to just stop allowing any of those coupons, which means prices go up for all people buying the groceries. Like, this is what happens all the time. We talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago with another bad bill where you put some top-down approach and then say that we're helping you and lowering your prices, but the reality is you're actually raising their prices. It's time for Republicans to hold the Democrats accountable because they talk affordability and then make our lives more expensive.
I would say once again, an example of how big government is getting into local businesses and local government, and forcing themselves into it, creating these issues, and like you say, causing the cost of living to go up for these people. Just insane, and I don't know how people can't see that these things are happening.
Well, we have to make them see it for sure. It's a great point. If you're wondering who the next target or what the next target is going to be for the green jobs groups, who through their various legislation like FEJA, CEJA, SURJA, and all the rest, have made our energy bills way more expensive while claiming that they've created a gajillion jobs, even though we don't actually see any of those, but whatever. Well, their next target is warehouses. Senate Bill 3732 and House Bill 5600. This is Rachel Ventura, Guzman, Ortiz, who are leading the charge. They want to put in place pretty strict rules for warehouses. If you read the bill, there's a whole bunch of requirements they want to put on warehouses. Why does this matter? It matters because one of the few industries that Illinois is actually succeeding in is distribution and warehousing because we're a central location in the U.S. We have one-day truck access to a vast majority of the American population. We have 25% of all freight trains go through Illinois. 50% of all intermodal trains go through Illinois. We are the hub for transportation. And so as a result, one of the few industries that thrives here is warehousing and distribution. So of course, these groups who claim to be about green jobs and green energy, but in reality, it's just how they've branded a purely environmental approach, regardless of what pain it causes for working families. Their next target is warehouses. Keep an eye out for it because generally when they make a target, Pritzker seems to come along. So this is something we all should keep an eye on. The same people who have claimed they're going to lower your energy prices despite the fact that your bills keep skyrocketing every single year. All right, let's go to the next one here. So House Bill 5147 and Senate Bill 3975, Omar Aquino and Mary Beth Canty. They want to force businesses to publish a wide range of their internal practices and make it publicly available. When I say wide range, they want to know a whole bunch of things like investor activities, their metrics for workforce demographics, for compensation, for benefits, training, development, workforce programs, quality policies, diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, health and safety practices. I mean, a whole bunch of things that are private information for businesses, and they want them publicly published for the whole world, including their competitors, to see. These are people who have no idea how business works. They don't understand that businesses in Illinois are competing with businesses in other states and in other countries. And the more of this that we publish, those competitors have access access to that information. Because so many of these Democrats down in Springfield have never signed the front of a check, they have no idea how detrimental things like this can be. But this is why Illinois is such an anti-business state. It's regulations like this. There are almost 300,000 regulations just like this on businesses in this state. And that's why businesses are choosing to invest in other states.
Not to mention the workload that, and you know this as well, the workload that puts on a business, which adds more employees in order to get those jobs done to answer to those regulations.
Yep. Yep.
It's exactly why all businesses are leaving the state. And unfortunately, those policymakers don't understand how economics work. You have to have businesses in order to bring in the funds to support those taxes.
Yeah. Yep. Next one here, House Bill 5528. Jamie Andrade, who is in a pretty tough election fight of his own right now, but he's put forward a bill that would hide your rental payment history from landlords and credit ratings. Now, again, Democrats, I'm going to give Democrats credit here that typically they have good motivations for the bills that they're putting forward. This is not a, individual who's doing this to hurt anybody. In fact, he thinks he's helping, but that's the problem, is that these Democrats who've never been landlords or business owners or property owners at that level don't understand how this hurts. Because if you have no credit rating history on an individual on whether or not they pay rent, you're a landlord, you just have to take them at their word that they're going to pay. You're going to have to raise rent on everybody to make up for the fact that some of these people eventually aren't going to pay their rent. That's why you want that rental history to be on their credit rating or credit report, because then these landlords can know who is going to be coming in who actually might pay their rent and who's going to be coming in who won't. If this bill passes, it will raise rent for all rent payers in Illinois. There's no other choice but for landlords to raise rent on everyone to make up for those people who eventually may not pay their rent. So by saying you are lowering costs for working families, you are actually raising their costs yet again. This continues to be a theme from Democrats down in Springfield.
Well, it's just gonna, the point of this, or credit rating, the lenders or landlords can make an informed decision on, okay, this is who I'm gonna rent to, this is what I'm gonna charge them, this is gonna be the interest rate on their loan, etc. And when you do stuff like this, it just means everybody's interest rate is gonna go up because they don't know who to trust.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I'm all for programs that will help people increase their credit ratings, that will help them get access to rental properties and a place to live. All for that. But let's put in place policies that help rather than policies that let us put out a press release and do a TV ad saying how much we care, and then they actually hurt. That's what I'm asking for. All right, enough with bills. Let's go to a couple things that have been in the news. Lane's going to bring up a map on screen. Job growth. So no surprise to anybody here that Illinois is among the worst in the country. You see on screen the job growth by state in 2025. Over the last year from the end of 2024 to the end of 2025. And you can see there that Illinois had a minus 0.1% growth rate. In terms of the number of jobs that we created, we were the seventh worst. If you look along the bottom there, worst of all the surrounding states, almost the worst in the Midwest. If you discount the far western states of the Midwest, we were the worst. Not a surprise to anybody, but we keep hearing, if you just do X, it'll create so many jobs. And, all of our policies, if we're Democrats, it's creating jobs. The reality is it's a lie. It's actually not creating jobs. And Republicans want to help working families. We want to help them get a job. The way to do that is to give them careers and opportunities by having not so much of an anti-business environment in this state. Okay, moving on. So speaking of business, that business environment in Illinois is so bad that the only way we can get businesses to locate here is to give them gigantic tax breaks. So you see a big headline in Cranes this week. Pritzker scores win as Japanese manufacturer expands to Chicago. It even caught Chris. Chris even thought that, wow, how great was this? He posted it himself. But the reality is, number one, this business is already located in Hoffman Estates. We didn't bring in anybody from Japan. But here's the kicker. To get him to do it, we had to give him tax breaks at the rate of $52,700 per job that they were creating. That was the only way to actually get them to do this. So the tax benefit to the state of Illinois is pretty insignificant considering how much money we just had to give to create these opportunities. And listen, I'm all for getting businesses to locate here. That is not the problem. problem. The problem is our business environment is so bad in this state that unless we give you gigantic tax breaks, nobody's coming here to start or to open or to expand their businesses. And that is the problem. You can't give give outs to every business out there, which is why we continue to lag behind the rest of the country. Chris doesn't even want to defend himself.
I didn't post it in the chat as like, look how good this thing is. I just posted it because I thought you would think you thought it would be interesting, Kyle.
Oh, good cover. Good cover. All right, almost done here. Let's go talk about Chicago for a second. This was pretty quiet. No one seemed to notice this. I only heard about it because the Sun-Times ran an article, so thanks to them. But the Chicago business license fees have increased as much as 400% at a time when businesses are fleeing Chicago for a whole bevy of reasons. They've decided this is the time to increase fees. So a limited business license doubled, a regulated business license quadrupled, a hotel license quadrupled. Commercial vessel license almost doubled. Shared housing unit registration doubled. Shared housing unit operator license doubled. An application for commissioner's adjustment for shared housing units had no fee before, and now it's $360, so that's an infinity increase. Livery vehicles, say that 5 times fast, over doubled. Charter sightseeing vehicles doubled. Medical carrier vehicles went up $100. Like at the same time, we're talking about, hey, you know what? We don't like that municipalities are putting so much fees on their housing and, stopping businesses. Chicago's like, screw you. We're going to double or quadruple all of our fees. It's so Chicago. All right. It should serve as no surprise then that our next topic in this category is that Chicago's credit rating has now been downgraded by multiple credit agencies. We're now just a couple notches above junk status in Chicago. You saw it was Moody's, and then one other agency downgraded Chicago, and actually 2 different funds were downgraded. And then of course you see Johnson sniping at the council, and the council sniping at Johnson. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's all y'all's fault because this is a trend. This isn't a new thing. We've all been telling you that this is a problem, but whatever. Keep blaming each other and don't actually change your behavior and do things the right way.
What's really surprised me about this and that the Fitch downgrade was it was based on
Fitch. You're right. Thanks for
Fitch.
the clarification.
Yeah, it's based on deficits since 2023. Because, to any of us, I guess 2023 was a surprise year in Chicago where things started going downhill. I'm not quite sure where any of the rating organizations were prior to 2023, but Chicago's been sort of a dumpster fire for a very long time. So if this is just starting from 2023 deficits, man, there's a long way to make up on downgrades. That's
actually a really good point. It kind of makes me a little nervous, to be honest. Speaking of Chicago, this again, I guess, shouldn't be much surprise, but that's certainly not a good thing. Newsweek ran a story based on, I think it's a Wallet Hub study. There we go. Yeah, Wallet Hub, looking at how Americans are struggling to make ends meet and having increasing debt. Well, they looked at which individuals have the most financial distress, and here you go. Lane's going to bring up a map on screen. Chicago leads all U.S. cities with the overall score of 77.74 out of 100. Ranks first for both the share of people with accounts in distress and the average number of people of such accounts per person. So on multiple factors, Chicago ranked first. And they actually talk about how it's been growing worse. They had the largest year-over-year increase, the largest spike in distressed accounts per person, ranks first in Google searches for both debt and loans. Whole lots of problems here in Chicago. And we keep hearing again that if you just do more policies that will give more, it's going to help these individuals. We want on the right to help these individuals, but the same policies for decades now has put these individuals and these working families in horrible financial position. Maybe, just maybe, could we try something different that could get them a job and a career and a future and help them build generational wealth so they can get out of this situation where they're in financial distress? Maybe it's time to try something new because our path that we've been on for decades now has not worked. All right. Almost done, promise. This is the last one, but I want to leave with something good because I'm sick and tired of the bad news. So, a bipartisan group of legislators who are part of the Clean Energy Choice Coalition have filed a series of common sense energy bills, Senate bills 3929, 3970, 3979, and 4028. The individuals behind those bills: Patrick Joyce, Seth Lewis, Javier Cervantes, and Terry Bryant. So two Democrats, two Republicans. I won't go into all of them because I've been very long in this section, so I won't go through all the details. But essentially, the goal here is to protect energy reliability, affordability in Illinois, push back some of the dates that were put in previous legislation that said we had to be carbon free by a certain year, 100% clean energy by a certain year, pushes those dates back responsibly while saying let's continue to build towards those. But at our current pace, the cost of energy for working families is already skyrocketing. And if we do try to meet these dates that are in the current laws, those prices for working families and small businesses and manufacturers are going to be completely unaffordable. So it's a bipartisan approach to have an all of the above energy approach that doesn't completely break the backs of our working families while we pursue a clean energy future. I love to see this bipartisanship and common sense, so kudos to these lawmakers. I hope these bills get a fair hearing done in Springfield. Pausing for thoughts. Okay, our News You Can Use section was long this week, so I understand that everybody's ready to move on. So let's go to our last segment for the week, our OGs and clowns of the week. I usually let everybody else go first, but I have to start. If you're watching this, you know at the beginning of the episode, we gave some thoughts. Ryan from my team and I gave thoughts on Marianne Bailey, who we lost very recently. So I have to make her the first OG of the week. Keith, I know you knew her, so I've already had a chance on this episode to give my thoughts. So I figured I'd give you a chance if you'd like.
Marianne got into politics long before I did, and she was very active in Lake County and Northern Illinois, really all over the state. And she was a force of nature. She was really involved with my campaigns and other people's campaigns. She did the hard work, and she did a lot of it. And she helped a lot of people. It makes me sad because she was just such a wonderful person, but it's also a time that makes me recognize with Senator Bill Peterson and others, we're losing a generation of really stalwart Republican legislators, elected officials, and workers. And Marianne Bailey was just such a wonderful person. And it makes me very sad that we've lost her.
Yeah, I like that you talk about, someone who worked and got things done, because right now, too much of our foundation of our party is based on keyboard warriors who know how to post to social media, but aren't going to go out there and organize a parade or knock on doors or, schedule a weekend of action and go get people out there to make calls and texts. Marianne was one of those who actually put in the work, whether you liked her or not. She worked her butt off. We don't have enough of that. So if anyone's going to learn anything from this generation that we're losing, we lose in Illinois for a lot of reasons, but probably the number one reason is we get outworked. The Democrats put in the work, and we tend to just prefer to complain. So you want to learn anything from losing someone like a Marianne Bailey, please go spend the weekend knocking on doors. Tomorrow, Friday, is supposed to be super nice. If you're in a campaign and you're not working through an inch of shoe leather, knocking on doors, then I don't know what the heck you're doing. All right, now we'll open it up. OGs, clowns, anyone you want to give praise or scorn to from this week, here's your chance to do it. Have some fun.
So I had two.
Go ahead, Michael.
Sorry, I have two clowns. One.
Hold on, Michael. I just got a text from Chris who has to go. Let's let Chris go first so he can run.
I'll be quick. The OG of the week is the United States men's Olympic hockey team for winning the gold at the Olympics, and the clowns are everybody who canceled them on social media because it took a call from the president of the United States after the game, and they went to the State of the Union. This is the biggest victory for men's hockey in America. I felt something when we won the gold. The 10-year-old me who thought he could go to the Olympics, I never had a chance. But I felt something when the United States won. So everybody who's canceled, they took a call from Trump. Go kick rocks. I don't know what to tell you. So U.S. men's Olympic hockey team, OG, clown, all the liberals who think they're stupid. Thank you.
Okay, Chris, I know you got to go. Go for it. You got a client event to get to. Michael, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say two clowns of the week. One, Congresswoman Robin Kelly. Obviously she's running for U.S. Senate. She has to comment on the State of the Union, right? So she kind of, makes fun of the fact that Trump was giving out Medal of Honor during the State of the Union and says it was like a glorified award show. And it's well, these people are veterans. People have made huge sacrifices for our country. I understand you don't like Trump, but you probably shouldn't downplay, Medal of Honor. I don't think that's appropriate. And then I also saw that State Senator Mike Simmons, who's running for Congress, he was knocking doors. Somebody called the cops on him. It was a big ordeal. And I just want to give a clown of the week to the people that do stuff like that, because we've all knocked doors before. We've been, harassed. People have called the cops on us, threatened us, etc. These people, I mean, they're candidates. They're people that, are trying to make a difference in their community, whether they're Democrat or Republican. Like, you shouldn't be harassing them, calling the cops on them, trying to get them arrested. Like, let them give their pitch and move on.
I mean, if we actually care about civics in this country, we should think it's a good thing that people
Is
want to
that a
get out
threat
and
to
talk to us.
democracy? Is that
Yeah.
a threat to democracy, calling the cops on people that, are trying to spread the word about a candidate? I guess so.
Yeah.
So I actually have there's three. I'll go very fast because Chris and Michael sort of stole my thunder a little bit. So look, I'm very proud of USA Hockey, but I'm very proud of something that happened right when the game was over. Jack Hughes, the gentleman who scored, 24 years old. He's a kid.
You're
Let's be
stealing
honest.
mine, Keith. You're stealing mine.
I know. He's a kid. He's a kid. Stealing all the way around. It's all good. When he gave an interview, mouth bloody, getting a high stick to the face, lost it.
He's missing.
I mean, it's if there was anything more classic than that with hockey, it's that. But he talked about his teammates. He gave some credit to Canada, but he said he was proud to be American.
Yep.
That is what the Olympics is about. That's what sports is about. That it transcends just playing hockey. And you don't have to be a hockey fan. You don't even have to be a sports fan. I don't know anyone in America who could have seen that and not felt it and really understood what it meant, that this was a victory, hard won against a great team. And by the way, taking nothing against Team Canada. Spectacular athletes.
Yeah, it's Canada. You can
Yeah,
make
but
it.
look, they're all spectacular athletes. But you know what? There was something just hardworking and grit and just making it work. Blood, sweat, and tears. And he's proud to be American. And that's worth something. It really is. The other two, actually, off of what Michael said, the Medal of Honor winners. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was involved with the Army Chief Warrant Officer Slover. I'm saying his name wrong. I apologize.
I do it all the time, so you're fine.
He was involved as a helicopter pilot who was injured in the Maduro raid. He got a Medal of Honor, and the retired Navy Captain Royce Williams, who's a pilot in the Korean War, 100 years old. People didn't know what he did. It was unheralded. It was sort of buried until it just came out very recently, and he won a Medal of Honor. These are American heroes. Forget politics. These people put themselves in the line of fire for all of us so we can do stuff like this. These are the real heroes. These people should be celebrated every single day. And I'm glad, I don't care how political the State of the Union is, we have to celebrate this more often in every possibility. So, thank goodness Trump gave them something very public so everyone could know who they are and how important they are to America. So those are my three OGs.
I like it.
I've got some here. I would say the OG I'm going to give to Trump because of pointing out those Medal of Honor winners as well. Instead of spending the whole time focusing on me, what did I do, which he spent a little time doing that. He turned the direction around and he started talking about people and how some of the things that have been done and affected these people or changes we've made congressionally to help these people. I thought that was really great. And we took normal everyday people and brought them forth and made them important. And I thought that was good. As far as, are we on clowns yet too? Can I go?
You can do whatever you want. There's no rules. Go
okay. Clowns. I'm going to go with all of the senators and congressional members who decided to get on social media and say F you. I thought that was a poor taste. It's just sad that that's what we've come to and that we can't be bigger adults than that and choose to be more responsible than doing that. You can think what you want to think. You don't need to put it on social media. So they're the clowns.
It sounds to me like you're probably not a big fan of Juliana Stratton's TV ad then, huh? So Keith and Chris, rightfully so, stole my OG other than Marianne. I'll just say this to add on to what they said about Jack Hughes and a lot of the men's hockey players who, throughout the Olympics, especially early on, you had the media sort of pressing everyone to say how ashamed they are of their home country because of Trump. And it was a little bit the media pushing it. It was a little bit some of the athletes wanting to take advantage of the opportunity. And it's fine. You want to be on the world stage and give your politics. That's your right. You've worked hard to get there. But as Keith said, this used to be a time where we came together as a country, and I'm just so sick of how everything gets so hyper politicized nowadays that we can't even come together during the Olympics. We got to go into a foreign country and talk about how ashamed we are of our president. Like, I don't know. I didn't like it. I'm not going to say I want my athletes to do that when there's a Democrat in the White House. You represent your country. Here, we attack each other. Out there, we're together. That's how it's supposed to be. So it was awesome to end the Olympics with just finally some unashamed patriotism, pride in our country. It was a great way to end it. I just wish we had seen more of it throughout. For my clowns, it's everybody involved in Cook County with this property tax disaster. In the last week, you've seen that now there's even more drama because the tech company that's screwed up for years and been paid millions and millions of dollars to modernize our computer systems, and yet they're worse than they've ever been. They're no longer going to talk to the Chicago treasurer, Maria Pappas, because she's too mean to them. And I'm sure she is. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure she is. But this is one of those just a pox on all of you, from Preckwinkle to sorry, Keith, I want to get you in trouble, but I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name. Chris would give it to me right now. Hey, Kagi, his office, and the county board in Chicago, and the treasurer. Like, this is an unacceptable disaster where you have hurt taxpayers in this county because you can't mail bills on time and you can't get your assessments correct and you can't get the money out to the school districts and the libraries and everybody else who needs it. And now we have to have front page headlines that you're not getting along because you're being too mean to each other. Grow up. Fix the problem, fix the systems, and do your damn jobs. That's it. I don't want to hear anything else. No more whining from you until you fix the problems. So that's one. Second one here. I think I missed one. Oh, here we go. Second one here is a Republican candidate. Thanks to Russell Lissow from the Daily Herald for identifying this and bringing it to our attention. In the 11th congressional district, there's a Republican candidate, Charlie Kim, who put out an AI faked video of him being endorsed by Donald Trump. And the Daily Herald caught it. Russell wrote a story. They since deleted it. This is not the first time Charlie Kim has pretended something to be true. He was going around before he ran, pretending like he was a representative of the Leadership Institute, and got them and a whole bunch of other people in trouble because they're a 501c3, but he kept going around saying he worked for them and represented them, and he was talking about Republican stuff. I don't know, Charlie. I'm not even sure we've ever even met, but I can tell you that he's got a history of saying things that are untrue, and he just got caught by it, and I'm glad he did. So we'll see how voters feel about that. He's one of 4 candidates running for Congress on the Republican side in the 11th district. Last one here is from Pritzker's budget. He gave a 1% increase to colleges and higher education in the state. And those entities have all said, well, with inflation, a 1% increase is actually a cut. And Pritzker's people came back and said, no, it's a 1% increase. And I just couldn't stop laughing because these are the same people who say, well, you know what? We got to raise taxes because we're not even keeping up with inflation with our spending. Hold on a second. Either inflation matters when it comes to budgets or it doesn't matter when it comes to budgets. But you don't get to take inflation and use it when it's beneficial because you want more of our tax dollars. And then say inflation doesn't matter because you couldn't give more money to higher education in the state. You don't get to do both. And oh, by the way, in their press release about this, their statement said, in a constrained fiscal environment caused solely by the federal government's chaos, yeah, hold the phone. All right, I understand. I have spoken out about my unhappiness with some of that chaos that has been caused. But you know what? Illinois has had fiscal problems since well before that chaos happened, since well before Trump was in office. You don't get to keep blaming all of your fiscal problems on other people like Ronner and Trump and everybody else. Pritzker, you've been governor now for over 7 years. Start to take responsibility for your own failures. It'd be a refreshing change of pace. With that, we'll do closing statements. So we always let our guests go last. So Michael, go first. Your final thoughts.
We're in the final stretch, right? A little over 2 weeks till Election Day. So it's going to be interesting. Stay tuned to SFR because I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about because people get silly as we get to the end.
Yeah, actually, my wife brought up because something happened. She was like, "Wow, is that the official start of silly season?" And I kind of chuckled because this season is so late. people are just now starting contrast and persuasion, which is supposed to start a month ago. So like we're not even actually in silly season yet. So I can't imagine how epic the final 10 days will be when we finally start silly season 3 weeks late. All right, so I forgot. I got to give it to the next person. So Julie's running for office. Keith, I don't want to play favorites. Everybody knows I love you, so I'm going to make you go first so Julie can go last. Go ahead.
That's okay, because I actually wanted to thank Julie as certainly as a representative of candidates running this cycle. As a county chair, it has become increasingly hard to find candidates who are willing to put themselves out there to the voters and withstand scrutiny to run for office. So Julie, unfortunately, I'm not in your district, so I have no dog in this fight, but I'm thankful and that you put yourself out there to run for office, and you put your family at issue and your business at issue and your lives on the line to be examined by every person who wants to criticize you for every little thing you've done since second grade. And I'm thankful that you are giving Republican voters an opportunity to vote on a quality candidate. So thank you very much for running.
Well, we can't change Illinois if we don't have candidates on the ballot. And I can tell you in 2026, we struggled, like Keith said, to get candidates on the ballot. So if you're watching this or listening to this and you're frustrated with how things are going in Illinois, guess what? Our biggest problem is we can't find candidates to step up to run. So maybe that should be you. If it is, then start getting ready for it now, because the 2028 cycle is not that long away, and neither is the 2027 cycle. We're going to be passing petitions, and actually not that long for 2027 local races. So I like the message, Keith. Julie, you get the final word.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you for all those kind words. That is definitely an issue. And people say, "Are you crazy for running?" And I'm like, well, either crazy or ambitious. I'm not sure which one. But I always think if you got a problem, you get out there and you figure out if you can help fix it. And if at the end of the day you get passed by, that's okay. You tried. But you fight to figure out solve those problems. So my main push and my wrap up for this would be, of course, what I'm supposed to say: get out there and vote. Vote in the primary, obviously March 17th, and vote for me, because why wouldn't you? But no, that's got to be my spiel for right now. So I'm going to wrap it up with that. But it's been great talking with you guys and talking over some of the issues federally, but of the state, because we all suffer from those. And I think it's important that we have good conversations and figure out how we can help fix them.
Well, the Democratic incumbent, Eric Sorensen of the 17th District, needs to go. So I implore everybody to be involved in that race. There's two candidates who are running the Republican side. And then on March 17th at 7:01, regardless of who ends up getting called as the nominee, let's all come together, because wouldn't it be nice to play on offense in one of these races instead of just constantly playing on defense? With that, we'll close down the episode because it's been way too long. But thank you for sticking with us. Marianne, we love you. We'll miss you. Lane, thanks for all your hard work as our producer. And we'll catch you guys next week on the Smoke-Filled Room.